So today we're talking about how to accompany a singer on piano. How do we play music that has a singer? What are my tips? What can we get better at when playing with singers? Because it can be a little tricky as opposed to playing with yourself or playing with a band. If you're playing with a band and there's a drum set, there's a constant beat. If you're playing solo piano and a singer and a vocalist, then you have time that can be a little more flexible. Often it is. Right? So how can we get better at that? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hey, I'm Schanno Johnson, and if you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff, music composition, music production. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. So I've got 6 tips on how we can get better at playing with singers and accompanying singers on piano. Let's get into it. Okay, so tip number 1, and I think it's the most important, is to follow and play with the singer. Now, I know that's kind of obvious. Like, well, yeah, duh, I'm playing with the singer, bro. But, like, you need to make sure that you follow how they're singing it, right? If they sing part of the song really loud and they take it to forte rather than mezzo forte or go to fortissimo or whatever, they bring up the dynamic volume, the dynamic range, you need to go with them there. Especially if it's in the performance. Now, a lot of this stuff is stuff that you want to talk to the singer about and figure it out beforehand, and you'll go through this in rehearsals, but in the moment, follow them. So tip number 2, stay with them. This is going to sound very similar to tip number 1 because I think it's really important. If there's a part where they speed up and you don't, the whole thing's going to sound bad. So it doesn't matter how you think the song should go, honestly, if when you're performing it, there's one part that they speed up, right? You need to figure that stuff out in a rehearsal, and you like write in your notes, this part you speed up, this part you slow down, this note is held really long. You put in notes in your book, but when you're performing with them in the moment, if they speed up, you need to go with them. You need to follow them. You need to speed up too. You need to slow down too, right? I was playing Little Mermaid, Part of Your World, a couple years ago, and the singer always sped up in Up Where They Walk, that part of the song, Up Where They Stay All Day in the Sun, right? Every time I had to speed up. I wanted to play it slowly, but it didn't matter. That's how the singer was doing it, so I needed to go with them, because otherwise we're both going to sound bad. You want, as a whole, to sound good, and that means that you need to be together, rhythmically, volume-wise, all that stuff. Third tip, simplify the music if you need to. So I have a video up, I'll link up here in a card and in the description about sight reading tips, and this is one of my tips for sight reading. It's also going to be in here, is simplify the music if you need to. Simplify. You don't need to play every single note exactly as it's written if it's not classical music. If you're playing theater music and you're accompanying the singer, the main thing is that you make the singer sound good, right? Nobody is going to judge the performance's ability on your separate playing abilities as if you didn't play together. It's going to be one performance. You're performing, right? Singer and piano player are both playing together, so that's the performance. If you take out a couple notes or you get rid of the octaves in your right hand or whatever, and that's how you play it, you just simplify it a tiny bit, nobody's going to care, as long as the music is a type of music where that doesn't matter as much. Classical music is a little weird, a little different, and in classical music you kind of need to play all of the notes because that's how the tradition is, but whatever. We're talking about other music that's not classical music. Simplify it if you need to. Accompaniment parts, especially for theater music, can be a little crazy. There is an accompaniment part in Little Mermaid. I think it's for the chef's song, Les Poissons. I think that's the song. There's an accompaniment part that has like a bass note that, you know, it's like a in 3/4 thing. It's kind of like a waltz. The bass note changes, and at one point you're supposed to be playing a 15th interval, so that's an octave and a fifth in one hand. And I don't know about you, but I can't do that in my hands. That's way too much. Like C to the G, 2 octaves above, no way. Especially at, like, you could roll it, sure, but at the tempo, it was like 1 2 3 1 2 3, and you had to, like, it was just so much stuff going on in that kind of wasn't unplayable, but the difficulty level was so much more than what I could do at the time. So I was like, nah, I'm just getting rid of that middle line for that bar and moving on. Did anyone care? No. Did the singer care? No. Did the director of the Little Mermaid show care? No, because it sounded good as the end result. And that's what matters, right? Each little specific thing doesn't matter as much as the entire performance. Fourth tip, which is one that I struggle with a little bit, is don't play too loud. Make sure if you're playing with a singer, people are going to want to hear the singer. Like, you might be the sickest piano player in the world, and like, congrats, because I'm not. No one's going to care. If you're like, people will care, sure, but if you're going to a performance of a musical, it's going to matter that you can hear the song rather than the accompaniment. Right? So you want to hear more of the singer and more of the singers, plural if there are, or more of the song than the accompaniment for it. Even if the accompaniment is really cool, even if you can play it perfectly, even if you are the best piano player ever, this singer needs to be heard. That's kind of just how it is. And like, yeah, it might suck, but also that's how it is. So then play it that way. Like, the whole thing will sound better. And you'll get more compliments if you do that than if you try and play over everybody and play super loud all the time. Tip number 5 is know when to lead and when to let the singer lead. There are going to be parts in musicals, especially. I play a lot of musicals. They're right above my piano if you can see them. There are parts in those musicals in certain songs where the singer needs to lead it. There are also parts where you need to lead it. A lot of the time, the parts where the singer leads it are more rubato. They're often more free. The parts that you need to lead are often parts that are more rhythmic and more strict, like consistent tempo. So just realize that. Be aware of that. Realize that when you're playing something like Part of Your World from Little Mermaid, as we talked about earlier, there are parts that the singer needs to lead the tempo and parts where you need to lead the tempo. The parts that are really consistent, really constant tempos, you're going to want to be leading, and the parts that are a little more rubato, they'll probably be leading a little bit. So realize that that exists and just notate it in your music, right? Or make a mental note. Like if you're playing Little Mermaid, Under the Sea from Little Mermaid is probably going to be the accompanist leading most of the time because it's really constant, really consistent tempo the entire song. But something like Part of Your World or another ballad is something that the singer might lead parts of it. You might need to follow their tempo a little bit more because they're the person singing the melody. And the melody, often in songs, is kind of what comes first. So follow them. Personal anecdote time. I really like this about theater music especially is that, and playing theater gigs, is you have this push-pull of the tempo. Right? Like sometimes you are leading the music and you're the one that's really driving home the tempo. Sometimes you need to follow somebody else's tempo. And it's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just realize that that's the case and it'll save you a lot of headache and a lot of like frustration and struggle when you think something should be a certain way and it's not that way when you perform it and you kind of just don't know how to play a certain part. You need to really listen to that singer. If you do struggle with this, put notes in your music, right? Put a breath mark, which is like a comma, as a slight hold. Put a fermata on something that's a really long hold. And you could even put a caesura, that's the 2 slash lines, as a hold that's in between those two, right? Maybe they hold it a little bit, but not quite as long as fermata where you really let it sit, but it's not just a kind of pulling back the tempo like a breath mark might be. Put those in your music after the first few rehearsals once you get an idea of how they sing it, because they'll probably sing it pretty consistently every time, especially if they're a practiced singer and if they practice the song. Or if you're working with a director that has an idea that they want, right? All these things are things that you can like pay attention to beforehand, and even if they're not the exact same as how you have it in your notes, you'll know that like, oh, okay, this measure, this one last fourth beat gets held out slightly longer than one actual beat, so I want to be ready to do that if that happens. Right? A lot of these things are, you kind of need to be like really in the moment, on the spot, paying attention, and that's what you need to remember as an accompanist is it's kind of hard to play as an accompanist on autopilot. Tip number 6 is something that I do a lot, and it works with youth orchestras and youth theater groups a lot, is give people cues for entrances. Maybe they're not super big, like you don't need to raise your hand and all of that business, but give them a head nod. Look at them, make eye contact, and be like, you ready? Cool, right? You want to let them know that they're about to come in, just to give them a little more confidence in what they're doing. I notice this a lot because I work with youth theaters and youth orchestras, is just that head nod of, hey, I know you're about to come in, will give them a little bit more confidence to be able to be like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I know where I am in the music. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they start singing or whatever, right? Be aware of that. Be ready to do it. Be able to do it. I know that's kind of hard to do when you're reading the music, especially if you're not super comfortable with it or super confident in your playing abilities, but be able to look at the music, look over at them, and remember ahead of time what it is, and like just give them a little head nod. I'll do this even if I have a band with me, right? I played Grease a number of years ago, and in that one, for the entrances for the band, I would give them all head nods because, I mean, they were all professional musicians, like sight read the music and made it sound great first time, but even they appreciated it because they're not the people directing the show. They haven't been there for all the rehearsal, right? So give people a cue when you want them to come in, just to be like, hey, you ready? And then they'll be like, oh, cool, I know where I am, right? Even if they do really know the music, it can just feel good to get reassurance that they do know where they are. And then it'll sound a whole lot better. Final note about all of this is just be comfortable with the music. Be comfortable playing the music and not really needing to stick to exactly what the written notation is. Because if it's something where there is kind of a rubato feel, you can't notate rubato super well other than just writing the word rubato, right? You can't notate that some measures are going to be longer than others. You have to write it in yourself. So be aware of that. Be comfortable with the music and learn it a little bit ahead of time so that you can follow and pay attention to what's going on a little more. A lot of being an accompanist, especially with theater music, what I've noticed is you need to be there in the moment with the singer. If you kind of get distracted with something else, then the song will suffer. So make sure that you're in the moment, you're paying attention with the singer. Final thing about being in the moment is, as working as a youth theater music director, one thing I've noticed is sometimes kids forget lyrics. Sometimes they get lost. I mean, ideally you don't want them to. You want them to know the music super well, but sometimes it happens. So make sure that you can follow them wherever they go. I remember I played Alice in Wonderland a while ago, and whoo, boy, the Mad Hatter's song, Happy Unbirthday, A Very Merry Unbirthday, whatever it was, Very Merry Unbirthday, Happy Unbirthday, whatever it is, that song, there are two versions. There's a intro version and then the reprise at the end. And I had kids in the actual show start at the beginning in the first version, jump to the second verse of the reprise, then jump back to the ending of the original one. So the song was like this 4-5 minute song when it's supposed to be like 2 minutes because they jumped around. And thank God I knew that music because I was able to catch them in the other one, then go back and then realize that they were ending it or whatever, right? Not that you're going to need to do that crazy business with professionals, right? Because you just won't. But be able to, right? Get to that level of knowledge with the music and that level of like comfort with playing the music where you can jump to the end and then jump to the back or whatever. Like, all, like you can imagine in your head all of the music laid out in front of you all at the same time and think, okay, we're jumping here, then we're jumping back, right? Be able to follow them that much. You need to be in the moment, you need to be paying attention, and you need to know the music. So get there. It'll help a lot, and it'll help you play better with a singer, and the singer will be happy that you can do that because they'll be more comfortable singing, and they'll be more comfortable just with the parts that they don't feel super confident with, that you know what you're doing. you'll reassure them, and it'll just be a better performance for everybody. So those are my tips for how to better play as an accompanist and how to better play theater music and read theater music with a singer. Hope those were useful. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you learned something about music. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.